All right, here we go. Well, good afternoon, Todd. It's just really so good of you to meet with me and really talk about a little bit about your journey. And I have a few questions, but what we call it in qualitative research, it's semi-structured interview, but there will be rabbit trails and questions that I will ask and I would want to know. But first of all,
I'll try to give you semi-structured answers.
Well, but I wanted to say thank you because first of all, as BIT Cyber has expanded into Northern Virginia, you have been instrumental to the program, to the partnership with Northern Virginia Community College. But it's not the only impact. You're continuing to impact students now and in the future. But what I learned from the event and in November celebrating this partnership is that over 20 years you have been involved in Northern Virginia workforce development efforts. And I want to go back and rewind it to your early years, growing up, vision for yourself and passions in high school. How did Todd in his teens and high school, what was there that informed your career, your passions, your commitment to making a difference? So
well, thank you. No, I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the answer. So how far back do you want to go?
Well, I think, as I look at our students, they may be somewhere high school decision making, perhaps maybe even earlier. But what were those milestones that helped you form your identity?
Education
education, person, people. There may be role models, something that informed your journey. That you look back and say, yes, this is. Yeah, and there may be multiple milestones along the journey.
Well, one of my earliest memories of the importance of education in my family was a conversation with my father. My father was a man of extremely few words. He was not certainly not as verbose as his son. But I remember I was in third grade, and I'm sitting there on a Saturday morning, watching Saturday morning TV, and my dad walked through the room and said, "You're going to go to college," and kind of walked out. And, my father did not graduate from high school. He stopped school in 10th grade because of the Depression, and, the economics of the time. He had to quit school, had to go get work, make money for his mom and dad to add to his mom and dad's income. And had done that for, with the exception of his enlisted time in the Army, he'd spent 35 years in the same factory working from a very young age. So, and I come from a family of farmers and factory workers, basically. But the value of education was not lost on my father, and he had a great amount of common sense. He was life smart as well as self-taught smart on things. And so I could see that, going through, that experience as, and when you're in third grade, you're not thinking about college, but Dad was. And he recognized that he did not want to have for my sister and I the same pathway in life that he needed to take, because my father was very good with mathematics. He just didn't have the chance to ever be have a career that used mathematics. But it was funny because it was recognized by our neighbors, and they actually put him on the local small school board. He became treasurer of the school board, taught himself accounting, and would run his own accounting books of the school at home and double check the accountant's work, and often found their mistakes. And so it was kind of funny to find, that level of appreciation for education. And so being self-taught in my father. And so I knew at a very early age that I probably was going to go to college. And then it was a matter of when I got older into middle school and high school, growing up in that kind of family environment of small businesses, small family farms. Everybody works from a young age. And when you can contribute, you contribute to the family. And I
You
remember one
developed a
time.
work ethic from early on, just
Yeah,
watching your parents.
exactly. No one stays at home while the rest of the family's working on, and if it's haying season, or if there's something that needs to get done on the farm, it's a matter of. And my family had both a family farm as well as a trucking company, and if you needed to help, you helped. And I remember even when I was in college, I would go home during the haying season on weekends and come back on Sunday night. And my roommate one time said, you must be making a lot of money. I said, how do you figure? And he goes, well, you're going home on Fridays, you're coming back on Sundays, you're working, last several weekends. I said, you really don't understand the economics of family farming, do you? Because you don't get paid when you're working with your grandfather and your uncles. You're getting paid in the fact that you're getting the chance to work with them, but there's no money changing hands here.
Yeah. And where was home? Where was home growing up? Where was the farm?
I grew up in southeastern Michigan, about 45 minutes south of Detroit. In that southeastern part of the mitten. And then when I was lucky. I did very well in college, or not college. Excuse me. Did very well in high school, and did well on my placement exams, and had choices to go. And I decided I went to a very small high school, and I figured I might get overwhelmed by the Michigan State or University of Michigan. So I went to a smaller size private college called Adrian College. Got a double major. I got a major in business administration and a second major in speech communications. And the two together, I figured knowing how to communicate while I'm in business couldn't hurt you. And since getting a double major was good economics for me, because they didn't charge me anymore for getting two majors, might as well do it. If you're going to go to college and they give you the chance to get two majors for the same cost, you get two majors. And then at the time there were no jobs in Michigan per se. It was a time when the economy in Michigan was challenging. It always seems like the economy in Michigan is challenging, and everybody was moving out of state to find jobs elsewhere. And I moved to Virginia. And when I moved to Virginia, I didn't have a job. I didn't know where I was going to live. I basically just kind of picked up and came down here. And coming down here with no contacts and no relation, no relatives or anything, was an experience.
Tell me more about it. What was it like? Because we have a lot of students who are in our program, but in general, that transition part is really scary. So you came with nothing. You came basically with a backpack, So you arrive into Northern Virginia, no contacts. Walk me through that first day as you're getting off. What was it, driving, or you took the train? Or
I drove. I had an old car that I'd had while I was in college. Drove down here and didn't know where like I say, didn't have a place to stay yet. Stayed in the Motel 6 in Falls Church for a week. Got an apartment or a room in a house over in Arlington with these guys that had gone to Catholic University, and I just started looking for a job, and literally fell into banking. And a very fortunate person I met in one of the branches. I went in to look for a job as a teller, because I figured I had to start at the bottom. And this woman that was managing the place was a long-term employee, had a lot of respect by the senior management. And she said, well, we have a management training program. Would you be interested in that? I said, I think I would. And she arranged for me to see the head of HR, who then had me up to meet with one of their senior executives, who in fact continues to be a friend of mine. I still trade. He's been retired for a number of years, but he still reaches out to me, and we communicate on Facebook. And basically, one day I'm unemployed, and it was several weeks, but it wasn't like I just came down here and fell into banking. I looked for quite some time, And, I think the key thing is just, you got to keep at it. You can't get discouraged. And I think the other side of that is you can't be above or below any job, and I think that's something that, when somebody says, well, I'm not going to go there because that job's beneath me, that when you don't have a job, no job's beneath you.
So humility is a good, quality to cultivate, right?
Yeah. And maintain no matter where your career leads. You should respect everybody's work, and I look at it with myself. I came from a very, very humble background. As I often will tell people, when growing up in my family, we didn't have a lot of money, but we were never poor, because everybody around me that lived in where we lived were in the same economic level, and so when I went to college, I would meet people whose dads were executive at the Ford, and doctors, and I had none of that background. So I was just experienced with that. So I had nothing that said I was above any job. If I could get a job one was get the job, and job two was keep the job, and job three was every day do the very best you can. So when you mentioned the workforce, I think that's probably one of the things that first drove me to be interested in workforce issues. Is when you come out of college, or you come out of whatever your circumstances are, and you don't have a job, getting a job is like winning the lottery. And so I feel that one of my personal paybacks is to make sure that other people have the ability to get a skill, whatever that might be, whether it be a trade or higher education, college degree, something that allows them to get a job. Because I'm very fortunate. The only thing I had really coming down from Michigan to Virginia was I had a piece of paper that said I knew something, and it allowed me at least have an interview that luckily led to a job. So I want everybody else to have the same fortunate circumstances that I was able to have. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that was your own experience kind of led you to that place of paying forward.
Yeah, exactly. And I've had a very fortunate career in banking ever since.
Mm-hmm. So what was the first banking institution you ended up after college? You didn't mention.
I worked as a management trainee for First Virginia Bank, which now has become BB&T. And I worked for them for about 5 years. And then Bank of Virginia called me and said, would you like to, come here? I had become involved with a few regional organizations by then. I'm kind of a joiner. And so I got involved with a few things. And so I got to be known. I had some modicum of success as a banker at First Virginia. And they went ahead and said, would you like to come work for us at Bank of Virginia? And I had met my wife at First Virginia. We were together for a number of years while I was working there. And so I had to think about leaving. There were certain advantages to leaving, the bank and not being the same bank as the girl you're dating, So, but it was a great offer that I got from Bank of Virginia. Bank of Virginia became Signet, became First Union, became Wachovia, became Wells Fargo, and I was there through that whole time. So I've been there. I was there during the times that we would buy a bank and the times that we were sold to a bank, and
that's having a lot of change to go through.
It is a lot of change, and the one thing that I always tried to pass on to my coworkers, especially, it's easier when you're the buying bank because your name doesn't really change, and you've bought somebody else, you're still you're pretty much your business cards are the same, your reporting structure is the same. when you get bought, though, you got to think and say, okay, I'm starting a little, not totally from ground zero, but I'm starting over a bit because, they don't know you, and it's up to you to kind of reintroduce yourself to the new company. Mm-hmm. And so you're not back to near zero, but you've got to work. I said, just keep working hard. If you keep working hard, it all works out. I said, I've been very, very fortunate in my career that, in the near 40 years I've been a banker in Metropolitan Washington. Not only have I been able to do banking, but banking has permitted me to do a number of volunteer organization work, and like we've talked about, tie those all together and find ways to wicker what I'm doing on the commercial side of my life with the volunteer side of my life, with the education side of my life, and build those bridges.
Yeah. You mentioned something, it's insightful, that you were management trainee. And as you and I, have been in several conversations, it seems to be also the thread that you're so passionate about formal and informal on-the-job training opportunities, whether it's an apprenticeship, co-op, and I think even our conversations about Northern Virginia Community College partnership and creating apprenticeships, and early on, not when students graduate from Virginia Tech, but as they enter. So I guess to me personally, that was an insight. So as a why, that's your own experience there as a trainee.
Yeah, and I'll kind of layer that with kind of my personal wiring philosophy is that I think in some form or fashion, everybody should be a kind of a K through grade learner. Everybody should continue to be learning something new all through their life. And in my case, when I came out of undergraduate school, I went to graduate school, University of Delaware, and got a degree in banking. I've got my MBA from Virginia Tech, in operating research management science, finance. And being able to layer those together is important, because each of those kind of added a dimension to my how I approach my job. At the same time, as you say, being able to volunteer at Virginia Tech, being allowed to volunteer, because it's one thing to want to, and it's also you got to be kind of asked to participate too. It's a two-way street. And first I was on the advisory board for the MBA school, which made sense because I got my MBA there. But it was an honor to be asked. And then over time I became vice chairman, then chairman for a number of years of the MBA school. And at that time the challenge was where Virginia Tech's MBA school was rated nationally, and I felt that we could do much better in the ratings. We could participate to bring the program up. So working with the provost, working with the dean at the time, and the other members, able to bring that up into the mid to low teens in national ranking from where it was, which was at the time probably around the 80s. It was ranked in the 80s, and it was and I joked one time. I said, "There's no more challenge to your degree to get a degree from a program that no longer exists." So I said my goal was to make sure the MBA program was perceived, it got better, was perceived to be better nationally, and raised in rank. And so having it ranked in the mid to low teens now is I'm very pleased about that. And as part of that, I think then they asked me to then go on the advisory board for the business school. And at the same time, it just happened that I was chairing the workforce board for Northern Virginia. I was vice chair. Tell me
about approximately the time frame. What year was your MBA, and at what the service on these boards? And you're referring to MBA school. I assume it was program, right? It's MBA program.
It was Pamplin. Yeah.
It's in Pamplin. Okay.
Yeah, it was Pamplin. What year was my MBA? I think it was like 94.
Mhm.
But then working with the business school on the business schools advisory board allowed me to then bring in Northern Virginia workforce, Northern Virginia businesses through the chamber, and then and for the last 8 years, I was on the board and then vice chair and then chair of the Northern Virginia Community College.
Mhm.
And because I'm a lifetime learner, as you and I've talked about, I figured the only way that I could understand how the community college works, because it is a state college, but it works differently than the university. And so I decided the only way I could learn really how the mechanism of the community college worked was to become a student. So about 8 years ago, I started taking classes in coding, and got a degree in IT with a concentration of coding. Then I had many relationships I had developed in the marketplace here of DC with leadership of AWS, which is Amazon's web services. And I could see there was no cloud computing program being taught anywhere in the United States. And so I kind of posed the question to my friends who were leaders at AWS, saying, shouldn't there be a cloud computing degree somewhere? And they said, yes, but no one's teaching cloud computing as a degree. And I went to Nova. I said, shouldn't we, be teaching cloud computing? The AWS is right here. Got one of their senior executives together with Scott Rawls. And, the net result is within a year, we had the first cloud computing degree within the United States. And now there's several others that have had their programs. But the cloud computing degree at Nova is tremendous, and I finished that degree a couple of years ago, and so I started focusing on cybersecurity, which is the next an applied associate's degree in cyber. But in the meantime, I finished my cloud degree. I'm AWS certified. I'm actually an AWS worldwide ambassador. Wow. Because of my connection there, and then folks. So being in the cyber program at Nova and learning again from these students, these are my classmates. So I write the papers, I take the tests, I write the code. I do I currently use Wiresharp and Metasploit and Meterpreter and ZenMap and Nmap, and I use all the tools. I do it myself, and so then at the same time I'm following up on the programs that are being taught in Virginia Tech with BIT, the cybersecurity data analytics. And what's so funny is how the world comes in a full circle, Philana. Back when I was taking my MBA at Virginia Tech, and let me see if I can find out that year for you real fast. I know dates are important, but when I was finishing my MBA at Tech, the person who was teaching my business information technology class was a fairly young associate professor that was working on her. I know she was working on her dissertation at the time, but she was taught my BIT class. And do you know who that teacher was? Robin Russell, who is now the dean of BIT,
Department head of
Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Fast forward a number of years, and there's Robin Russell, and I'm on the advisory board, and she's there, and it kind of dawned on me that one of the conversations I had with many of my Nova colleagues, and apologize for me looking out to the side, but I'm trying to get that date for you. But when I talk to these students, and again, they're my colleagues, they're my fellow students, and I would ask them where they wanted to go after they got out of Novo, and often, their aspiration was to go to like a Virginia Tech and continue to get their 4-year degree. But the challenge with that, as I learned from these, is that their family economics did not permit them to be able to do it. And as much as they, had a desire, to want to go to Blacksburg and become, transition to that, family economics we're going to let it happen, which kind of harkens me back to being in 3rd grade and, my dad saying, "You're going to college," and, it really hurt me, to know that these students that were doing tremendously well in cybersecurity would not be able to matriculate to a 4-year college because of housing, food plans, travel costs, set aside the cost for just the academics.
Well, and so many have families, right, already.
Oh yeah, and they're holding down 2 or 3 jobs. I got my MBA in 94. I think it's still valid, really do. Expiration on that, I got to check on that. But I kind of broached the subject, lightly with Dean Summacrast and with Robin, about this idea of a crossover in Northern Virginia for Nova into a program, because there was no program up here. We were developing the programs for engineering, but there was no program for BIT, cyber, and data analytics.
And of course, engineering was master's, not undergraduate program.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. And I said, is there any possible conversation that could be had? And they said, yeah, we'd love to have that conversation. So, I first broached it with Tech before I go to Nova, because I didn't want to set up a possibility that wouldn't be feasible for Virginia Tech. And luckily, Virginia Tech was very open. You were very open. You were a very strong advocate for this to happen. Or I put a lot of the credit to you for making sure that this thing kept moving forward. And it was just, again, how these things align naturally. They're almost planned accidents, that happens, because on the Nova side, of course, they were interested in the conversation, but it just happened to be that their vice president for academic affairs was a triple Hokie. Sherry Robertson had gone undergrad, graduate school, got a doctorate, PhD, all from Virginia Tech. So she was very excited about the possibility that there could be this Northern Virginia connection between Nova and Virginia Tech. And you were right there in the middle, playing referee as well as advocate. And it's turned into just a wonderful partnership. And my thanks to you for taking my little spark and making it a flame.
Well, and this is the program, there's just only one program. We discussed creating bigger umbrella partnership and you mentioned that the George Mason University's, what's the name of that program?
The advanced program.
Advanced program. How did that come into play? Because I can see the passion for advancing students from Nova into workplace, into the 4-year degrees, that passion that you've had, from your 3rd grade message from your dad, has been not just for Virginia Tech, it's also for Mason. What was your role in Mason Advance? And tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's probably, I was sitting there one day and I was taking my Nova classes, and it was explained to me the classes that I was taking that would not necessarily be accepted by George Mason, and I heard several times, this is when early on, and I probably was vice chairman before I became chairman of Nova, because I had 8 years on the board, and I'm on a new advisory board for Nova. So I haven't quite gotten you never get quite out of it, right? There's always one more thing to do. And so I'd heard from my fellow students the challenges they were having with transferring credits and that. And I like to work efficiently. You can either work often or you can work efficiently. I like to work efficiently, and I like one of the great trainings I've gotten out of Virginia Tech is I'm a process guy. I like to process things efficiently, and probably why I got my degree in operations research. And it's a process degree on with finance. So finance major concentration, but a sub-concentration of OR. I liked OR, and so which is now called management. It's called data analytics now. But back in the day, it was called operations research management science. Now it's called data analytics. So but I had this conversation with the then president Angel Cabrera, who's now the president of Georgia Tech. But Angel and I knew each other, and I said, explain to me why this is such a difficult thing. I said, English 101 is English 101, ITE 115 and ITE 115. I said, why is this such a difficult thing? And I, the class that I had taken at Nova in SQL, was data, was database management, So I've written in 7 different languages, and so SQL being one of them, with database management. And I said the professor actually teaches at both colleges, but there's a question, same syllabus, same everything, same book, everything. I said, why is it sometimes a challenge for the student who got a grade in the class to have that just transfer over? And he says, I really don't know. He said, it really should be easier, shouldn't it? I said, it really should be. I worked with him and then the president, Scott Rawls. And I think there was benefit having relationships on both sides, as it is, having relationships on both sides with Tech and Nova, because I can act as the bridge, and I can translate sometimes, and it made it even more easier being a student. And being a student that actually took the classes, I could say, I took that class, I got an A in that class. I can vouch for the validity of the class. And they took that conversation from an acceptance of a class to this advanced program. And the advanced program is important, and having helped them develop that over several months was very gratifying, because we took the conversation from just accepting, the classes taken, to dual enrollment, one transcript. That when you apply for the advanced program, you have your logo on your student ID is both Mason as well as Nova. Your transcript is for both Nova and George Mason. So you don't have to reapply after your second year of college. You're already in Mason, and the transition is seamless. If you want to take classes, let's say you want to take a class and you can't find it at the right time at Nova, but they teach that same class, of course, at Mason. You can take the Mason class, vice versa. If you're, so you're able to efficiently transition yourself from one institution to the next, and you never have to have two different transcripts. It's all one unified transcript. Very efficient, very cost effective, and that program has just hockey sticked in size and notoriety.
Well, and it became kind of one of the national models. It's right there, well researched now in student success and degree completion. And it was interesting because I was leaving Mason and coming to Virginia Tech around that time as advanced was being proposed and being rolled out. And what started with engineering major, which obviously, because you were most familiar with, now expanded to multiple degrees. Of course, Mason had a good foundation. They had a great transfer advising team, right? They already had a good support for non-traditional populations. And now I believe if it's not the largest transfer program, it's one of the largest in Virginia.
Yeah. I mean, we started out with, call it a dozen to 15, degrees, pathways, and now we're well over 120.
Right.
And it's just, and I'm very blessed that I get the chance that when I say why, somebody actually sits down and wants to solve these problems with me. I'm not very good about, and again, I'm honored that you'd want to talk to me about this stuff today and highlight it, as an alumni, because, in my family, you tend not to, talk about the things that you've done. It's you grow up kind of saying, it sounds like you're, putting on some airs here, it's just, you do what you do because
you do because you have to do it. It has to be done.
And you need to get done.
About it, right?
Yeah. Don't go to your uncles or your grandfather or your father saying, hey, I did this. And they look at you like, so did it need to get done? Yeah. Well, fine, you did it. Great, but find something else to do. And I kind of look upon these opportunities like that. Is that, I wanted to know how the college worked. The community college worked. So I took classes, and that opened up all these other questions of other relationships I had out in the market. Mason, I heard there's a problem. My classmates are saying they're having a problem. Well, I might be in a little better position given, my connections and relationships to figure out why that's still a problem. Because to me, it's a process issue. Where do I learn about process? Tech, but it's this kind of stuff. I'm honored to say that I kind of got the ball rolling on advance, but I don't really talk about it because, it doesn't really matter who got the ball rolling. It's a matter that somebody got the ball rolling. It just happened to be me.
It is. You're right. It's important that somebody did, but this takes like that leadership and the ability, the visionary ability, to connect those dots.
You have the ability to get the people in the room. That's right. Really what it is.
And you're saying, you were connecting in your life, the educational, the banking, the community outreach and volunteering roles. And this was happening, correct me if I'm wrong, when you were already involved in Northern Virginia Chamber in a leadership role, right? And so you had a voice, you had respect, you had a voice at the table, and that role allowed you to broker the relationship with higher education. You were in the room, people who were listening to you, and that's an amazing.
Well, they at least couldn't not listen to me. How's that? I had a unique position for a couple of years. I was simultaneously the chairman of the workforce board of Northern Virginia, the chairman of vice chairman, then chairman of the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, and then vice chairman and chairman of NOVA. And when I looked at that from a process standpoint, from a value to the students and to the to the employers, to the workforce, to the education, to the economy, I looked at those not as layers, but as kind of an orchestra, a Venn diagram, and I said, if we have the workforce board and the community college and the chamber, which is the business community, all working together in coordination and unison, and then you bring in the other partners of higher education of Virginia Tech and Mason and others, and you're saying, okay, now we have a ecosystem where the workforce board identifies for individuals, what their skills are, what do they want to do, what is it they can do, and what is the training they need to do what they want to do, right? That's the assessment part over here.
Right.
Then you've got the community college and Mason and Tech saying, we have the skills. This person wants to learn coding or cloud or cyber, we're the repositories of being able to teach those skills. And then you have the companies who want to come forward. They want to economically support these initiatives because it's in their best interest to fund these things so that the throughput is going to meet demand.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, you're never going to
talent coming into those jobs.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, yeah, that is the farm team system right there. Right. And so you have that. And so, you know, the companies will then communicate what are the skill sets that are needed, what are the jobs, what's the demand, you know, what volumes, and communicate back at the workforce board and the community college and the other college universities, and they all start talking to each other. Because before I started doing this, quite honestly, they didn't. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd be going to these meetings. I was a member of the chamber, I was a member of the workforce board, I was on these colleges and universities, and they were separate conversations. Mm-hmm. And, you know,
probably a lot of redundancy too. People were doing the same thing, right?
so much waste, and so many, not just, you know, redundancies, but there were pieces that were missing that would never get addressed. I mean, you would have these gaps, you know, and I, you know, and I'm just very lucky, very fortunate that people that asked me to sit on these boards, and because again, I came down here as a guy who didn't have a job, didn't have a place to live, but what I had is a piece of paper. And so as I tell a lot of these students, you know, I was like them. You know, you turn the time machine back to when I first got out of college. I was unemployed. Mm-hmm. I was homeless, but you know, I could pay for maybe a couple months worth of a room in a house with some guys that were going to Catholic University in Arlington. But other than that, you know, if I hadn't found a job in, you know, a couple months, luckily I fell into banking because I was hustling in this town. I was answering about every ad that was possibly, you know, it's, you know, I was wearing out a lot of shoe leather, you know, and luckily I fell into banking, and I was somewhat fortunate that I was good at it, you know, if I, you know, but I figured I could be unemployed anywhere. But I tell these people, I have a lot of not just sympathy for you. You know, sympathy is one of those words, you know, that people make it's a negative word, you know, mm-hmm. I'm sympathetic. Well, sympathy, as you know, means I sympathize with you. I feel for you. I share the feelings with you. It's not I feel bad for you. You know, it's not, sympathy doesn't work like this and this, you know, right. You know, sympathy means this. I feel you. I feel exactly how you're feeling.
I understand, right? I have been
exactly.
there. I know,
right? And I tell these people, I said, I was, you know, for all intents and purposes, you know, when I moved down here, it wasn't like my family said, here's a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of money. You know, I said, you know, I didn't know where I was going to live, and I didn't have a job. And I said, I was you. You know, I said, I mean, you know, in the workforce board, I was them. You know, and the college students, I'm them. I'm not just like auditing the class as some, you know, old guy just sitting in class, not worrying about listening, you know, while I'm, you know, playing with my phone. I'm taking the class. I'm taking the test. I'm writing the papers. I'm in the class, and I tell them, I said, this, you know, you know, in these classes, you get the grades you earn, not the grades you're given. You get, you know, you earn the grade, you get the grade. And I said, but these people are my colleagues. My students are, you know, the students I'm with, they're my classmates. And so having the ability to have over time become in a role where I could be chair of all these three organizations and have influence ability on the others, to bring them all in the same tent and to have these things be produced. The advanced program, certainly I didn't think it would catch fire as much as it did. I'm glad it did. Gosh, you know, I'm just, you know, please. But when somebody says, wasn't that your idea? I said, well, you know, let's focus on the job at hand. Let's don't let's spending time on memory lane, it's but but it's really the ability to bring everybody together to see where there is overlap, certainly for waste, but there's gaps.
Yeah.
And in the case of the advanced program, there were gaps.
Mm-hmm.
Why are there gaps? Why can't we just make a seamless transition? Why can't there be a dual enrollment? And the answer is, well, there really isn't a reason why they can't be enrolled. Well, then let's just do it.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the cyber program with BIT. Why is there a reason? No, there's no reason we can't. It makes a lot of sense. Well, let's just do it. And suddenly you go from dozens to hundreds to thousands. And the funnel for that, the ability to put people through that program and the benefit will have to their personal economics, to the economics of the companies, and the betterment of the region
and the state.
In the state. I often cite to and I have to a couple of governors that people that don't have jobs don't pay taxes. I said, but people that have jobs pay taxes. And I said, and people want to have a dignity of work.
That's right.
And I think
something that you mentioned, I want to interrupt you. I'm looking at the time. We have like about 8 minutes left.
I have as much time as you want.
I wanted to ask you about.
Is this helpful?
This is exactly what we need, and I know that there will be maybe a couple of articles. So I trust that Kristen will unpack things here. But I wanted to talk about the time again more as general understanding of workforce needs and being on those three roles simultaneously. And knowing that the state was moving in the direction of efforts to create tech talent strategy. How did that role focus on tech? Where were or maybe it just fell into it, but.
Tell me, ask me the question again. I want to make sure I understand what the question is.
So you described the general role that you were in those three volunteer positions on the board of being the chairman of the workforce board, being the vice chairman and the lead of the Northern Virginia Chamber, and then on NOAA's board. So workforce needs were there. But at what point the conversations really focused on tech talent? As the state was tech talent pipeline, really not just doing engineering and other programs, but really tech talent pipeline conversations, employer needs, and then talking about the population decline, birth decline in the country, and really looking beyond just ecosystem of the region, but these are state demands, and we're part of the state, and the solutions need to be, and not just state. Well, cyber is a U.S., Northern Virginia, D.C. area as a national cyber capital. So I just want to look at that, more of a tech talent, cyber talent, and the really strategic needs of the state and of the country. And what do you see? How do you see that moving along the last few years? And then what's the next chapter?
Well, for the last several years, it certainly has been a central topic in pretty much every meeting that I've gone to. I mean, the tech talent issue and this, the cyber and data analytics in particular, those topics have become centric to every get together in some form or fashion. On the state level, whether it be the governor's office or the Secretary of Commerce or the EDAs, they recognize that without an ability to keep funneling talent into this sector, the rest of the sectors are going to suffer. And I think the challenge that I've seen and the answer I tried to give to all of these companies is when they talk about cyber, I said it's not like the cyber industry is like parked here, and everybody cyber is ubiquitous.
Mm-hmm.
Real estate, banking, hospitality, government contracting, not-for-profit. There isn't an industry out there that doesn't have a need for a cyber component. It's ubiquitous across all those platforms. And so when they say, well, we need more cyber talent. And I get people to say, well, where do we need the talent? I see everywhere. It's everywhere. I said, and it's not like somebody that we often they'll say, well, no, we're talking cyber degrees. I said, yes, and we also are talking about some cyber awareness, cyber just the ability to have cyber classes that may or may not lead to a degree, but we need cyber awareness classes, cyber training classes, cyber proficiency classes.
It's for existing workforce you're talking.
Exactly, exactly right. We need that to proliferate through the current workforce, and so that we have a building common understanding of what cyber is, because people have the misnomer of thinking that cyber somehow is like James Bond, that it's it's super secret technology stuff, and it's not. Cyber and cybersecurity is just the ability to look at a stream of data or a collection of information and look for anomalies, which is and the reason I know this is because I've done that. I've done the Wireshark analysis. I've done the Metasploit, where I have exploited a system on a virtual machine. So I said, I understand what it is, and it's not James Bond, but the ability to look at a string of data and a string of messaging, and to look for anomalies, and then look at those anomalies and say, is that an intrusion or is that an event? Is it a normal event? Is somebody just accessing a port normally, or is somebody trying to exploit a port for malicious purposes? That's a different skill. That's not James Bond, and they're learnable skills. And I tell people, we as human beings our DNA is trained to know anomalies. Going back to when we first stood upright, and we saw some movement. And the analogy I always use is, when we first stood upright, our ancestors, they'd see movement in the tall grass. Well, is that a tiger or is that Bob? But we noticed there's something odd about that section of grass, and we would, then determine whether or not it was danger or it was friendly. I said that in its nutshell is cybersecurity. We're looking for anomalies. We're looking for intrusions. We're trying to determine, are these malicious or are they normal? And I said, and we shouldn't be scared of it. I have now taken enough courses where I am very close to getting my third NOVA degree, this one in cybersecurity. And it just allows me to have this conversation without having to worry about, I'm not trying to be a cyber guru, but, the comfort level allowed me to know that a handoff, a healthy handshake and a growing beneficial relationship between NOVA and Virginia Tech made so much sense. And I'm so glad that, it became, a four-way handshake, because it really, between the students, me, Virginia Tech, and NOVA, the winners there are the students of both NOVA and Virginia Tech.
Well, and the regional industry, right? Because that's what we're trying to do. It's not just I don't know if you know that as of this year, BIT is the largest major, even more than CS.
Wow.
And BIT Cyber is the largest concentration. We have almost 500 students, with, of course, the contingent of students here in Northern Virginia area. But something you described made me think about one of our alums, Jessica Gulick, sharing with students that cyber is about human behavior. And the fact that we have such diverse population entering in our program in Northern Virginia, they come with speaking at least one other language, have years of experience. That cultural competency is probably very well, positions them very well for success, or for companies that need that level of cultural competency. Sadly, our students don't realize that that's of value. They still see their foreign background, even their U.S. citizens, they see it as a barrier. So where we sit right now, and where the program and our partnerships are, and your role as an ambassador for AWS, as an ambassador for that ecosystem type focused human capital development for the region.
An ambassador for Virginia Tech.
What does the next chapter look like for you? Where do you see this unfolding, not just with Virginia Tech? What is the next chapter for Todd and making this world a better place and safer place for all of us? And
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, I think the one thing I will probably focus on next is to work within the business community and the educational community to build stronger pathways of working together and not feeling that they're competing together. I think there's more work to be done than bodies to fill the need. So I think what we need to do is work as a collective group more closely, and I think the over the next several years, it's then bringing regions together. I've recently taken on the role of president of Central Virginia for the bank, and one of my self-appointed roles or goals will be to then have cross-regional partnerships. If you can bring Northern Virginia, Southwest Virginia, Central Virginia, Richmond area, Eastern region together, and include South counties, because South counties always gets lost, in the conversation. If we can build these multi-regional, cross-regional partnerships, and then have that ecosystem working like it is, it has been, beneficially between the chamber, the workforce board, the college, and that cross section. If we can do the same thing cross regionally, then that's going to be a very powerful tool. And I want to work on these partnerships, because we can't be somebody stealing a company from Northern Virginia, taking them down to Richmond over to Central Virginia down to Blacksburg. That isn't helping the region. That isn't helping the Commonwealth. That's just moving rocks around. We need to get the system of I always say the analogy is penguins. Penguins, one of the things they do when they make their nests is they steal rocks from each other. The problem is there's a finite number of rocks, and I said, what we need is more rocks. I want to have a truck come up, drop a bunch more rocks, The analogy here for the state of Virginia is, if we start working efficiently across regions and better partnerships between the universities and the companies, so that turning out more trained people that have education and competencies that fill the needs of business, and we do that cross regional and cross Commonwealth. If I can play a part in that, that'll be a great thing, because it's the equivalent of dropping more rocks. You do that, more people have jobs, more positions are filled, the companies do better, the regions do better. And it doesn't matter who thought of it, doesn't matter who originates it. It just needs it's like my family, it just needs to get done.
It needs to get done. Well, it's 1:03, and I think I want to finish, but I want to pose a question for you for maybe future conversations. Is rocks are no longer easily accessible because population is declining. The national, by 2030, census indicates that in-country population growth through in-country migration will outpace growth through in-country birth, and we have seen it in higher education. We're going to continue seeing it even more so. And we see also at the same time the loss, higher dropout from middle schools and high schools, higher dropout rate in community colleges across the country. So my challenge would be, or a question to the industries, to think, how can we partner not just with universities and community colleges, how can we partner with regions and educational systems, because they're systems, all the way through middle school and high schools, and encourage students to be role models there. To complete their education.
Yeah,
I think the standard, because right now, we're looking at some Southwest Virginia schools. I've heard from people, I've seen firsthand. The kids are thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to go and do this and this. They're not even thinking about finishing high school.
No, you're right, and it's a combination of two things in my perspective. One is um, getting students to focus on it much earlier. And it's easier. People say that, but they don't focus on it, right? And you things get done if you focus on it. And I think everybody looks at the problem of cybersecurity, and I think their first reaction is they're too big. It's too big of a thing for them to play a role in, right? But truly, it's not. If you make the decision to focus on something, many minds together can really address this in a very substantial way. And you start out. People say, well, start teaching this kind of stuff in elementary school. I'm not an educator. My personal feeling, is that it might be a little bit too young to layer cybersecurity into a curriculum. But certainly middle school students can, they can grasp it. Maybe a primer in sixth grade or something to prep them up. But middle school and certainly into high school, that cyber and these technology sector subjects can be easily integrated across multiple platforms, multiple classes, and I think the challenge is that everybody thinks, well, you're going to come out and do cyber, but there are so many jobs that have a cyber flavor that aren't cyber, and I think we need to do a better job of starting the universe earlier at an earlier grade level, and we also have to demystify it. We have to get past all of this Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise. These guys are hacking away. That is not what we're talking about. And and I think along the line it is and maybe the business community owns part of this, because if you make something appear to be unlearnable, you can charge more for it, right? But it should be something as easy as algebra. And people say, well, how do you? Because I've done it.
Yeah, and I think the statewide cyber range initiative, CCI, they're trying to address it. What's interesting to me, and I think why don't I stop recording here, because it's not going to be part of the. But I wanted to hear thoughts on that.
We're getting into another subject.
Yeah, but I want that last statement that you said. Business community could be a part of it. Policy-wide, the state already has cyber.
We need to demystify the entire cyber.
And you met Jessica, right? She's talking about, what is potentially, how can we use cyber gaming and bring into middle school, like even a moving bus where industry reps can come in and schools can participate, and open cyber to as early as elementary schools and middle schools in particular, as you're saying, starting there, but just to open the minds of kids in these remote areas of the state where teachers perhaps have never left that part of Virginia to even come to the ocean. And that's what I've heard. So many teachers in public schools.
Here's an example. You can make these analogies, and maybe this gets important thing is that, stenography, the ability to embed messages into images. And you say, okay, well, how's that? And then you have people learning graphic design. I say graphic design is a perfect platform for overlaying the cyber technologies and techniques of stenography. I think we find more of that to do. I think people think of it in the realm of computer science and computer engineering, but it's not. Business is an overlay. The overlay of banking and cyber, real estate cyber, but also those more creative degrees that we all have. Graphic design is a perfect universe for something like stenography, but people don't think of it that way. They think of the image, not the creator of the image. We got to start thinking of, we need to answer your question one way, another way, to address this from a personal level. I'm going to be working to try to find those type of traditional, non-linear thinking of connecting these skills with these industries, because graphic design is a phenomenally growing area for computer design, and the area of stenography is one that is just one example of what we could do with those kind of things. We need to do more of that kind of stuff.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I will share this recording. I can share it with you and with Kristen, and we'll dissect here for the article.
Well, if she has any questions, she can always give me a ring.